Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Kelleher over at the Carrollton Animal Hospital. I'm just logging in to see if anybody has any questions or any concerns, anything you want to talk about. I'm ready whenever you are.
I don't have the question. Do you have those? Alright. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Not on camera, right?
No, I am on camera. What do you need? Just waiting on the questions. I wasn't sure how to use those. So. I think so.
I got the big one sitting out there, and then I got stuff, and I don't know how you do your stuff, so. He's just holding the ear, yeah, right now is the. Still on a mess.
Okay, so looks like the first question we have is, how long is too long for my dog to be outside? So that kind of depends on the breed of dog and then also how cold it is outside. So some breeds, a lot of times they'll have the double coat, which people have heard of before. There's like an undercoat that's really fluffy and warm, and there's an outer coat which actually acts as a water repellent. So for example, Huskies, German Shepherds, Malamutes, those types of breeds, as well as a lot of their mixes, will have this double coat. So they can actually stay outside in cold weather for quite a while without getting actually cold, because that outer coat acts as a water barrier, keeps them dry, and then the inner coat keeps them nice and fluffy warm, and then they're able to poof it up really well. Your other dogs that don't have double coats like that, for example, a lot of your spaniels, dachshunds, poodles, poodle mixes, those types of things, they don't have that two layers for them to keep them dry and then also warm. So they can't stay out for nearly as long. So as far as how long, it would depend on the temperature and how wet it is outside. They're going to be able to stay outside for a lot of shorter amount of time when it's raining and when it's wet, because the cold is going to kind of seep into them. Whereas if it's nice and dry, they'll be able to stay out for a little bit longer as long as the wind chills down. To put an exact time on it for a breed without a double coat, I would say if they're just hanging out outside, maybe half an hour would be good to bring them back in after that. If they're running around and exercising, then, you know, kind of until they're done exercising. You know, if they're running around and really working, they're going to keep themselves pretty warm. Next question we got are, what are some practices to implement when caring for pets during the cold weather months? So it kind of depends on where you typically keep your pet. So if you have typically an outdoor pet, you're going to want to make sure you have like a heated water dish or something that would not freeze. So they always have free access to nice, clean, wet water, not frozen, so they'll be able to get to it. And then also making sure that the food doesn't go bad. A lot of people think about food going bad in the summer because of the heat and the bugs, but depending on the weather, you know, you can get a freezing rain or something like that, or the food itself can freeze, and so the food can still go bad. So you don't want to just kind of throw stuff out and not look at it again. You kind of want to check in on them. You can make sure they have a nice warm place to sleep. So either have a garage with kind of a heated pad or a heater in there, or if you have a dog that lives out in a dog box, if you pack that dog box with straw or sawdust, it's going to help give them something to kind of burrow into, and that's going to help them stay warm as well. The biggest thing is making sure they have a nice, warm, dry place to go to. Always access to fresh, clean water that's not frozen, and palatable food so that they can keep warm, all the calories and everything. And then, do you recommend bathing your pets or shaving them down in the winter? As far as that goes, as long as you have a temperature-controlled environment that you can keep your pet in to dry off completely, bathing them shouldn't be a problem. Just use warm water and make sure they can dry off in a nice warm place before they would go outside again. I wouldn't bathe the dog and immediately put him outside. That's a good recipe for frostbite. As far as shaving them down, some pets need shaved year-round just for cleanliness. They get issues with feces getting caught in their hair getting really long and matted, those types of things. If you have a dog that needs shaved in the wintertime, that's when you can purchase some dog clothes, like blankets for your dog or coats and things like that. Keep them warm when you take them outside. The biggest thing is just keep in mind is essentially if you take off their hair coat, it's like you going outside without a coat on. So they're going to get cold a lot faster, and they're going to be definitely more exposed to the elements. But for the pets that need shaved, absolutely you got to shave them. Keep them clean, keep them happy, keep their skin healthy. I don't know what to talk about. So we actually had a kitten come in the other day that did have hypothermia. It was a little kitten, about 5 weeks old. He was really cute. His name's Carl. He did leave today, but he came in. He was very cold. The owners noticed that he wasn't really moving a whole lot, and he was really sleepy. Those are some of the big signs that you'll see with hypothermia. Is you'll notice they just get really lethargic. If you catch it in the early stages, you'll actually get to see them shiver. But if they move past that, then they're going to quit shivering, and they're just going to get really lethargic and cold, and their body's going to start to shut down on you. And but they got him to us in time, and we were able to warm him back up. He was doing really well when he went home today. So things to keep in mind is, little babies are going to get cold a whole lot faster than adults will. They have a really fluffy coat, but it's not that insulating, and they have a pretty big body surface area to size ratio, so they're going to lose heat really quickly. So that's something to watch for with our little kittens outside there. How to keep your kitty safe and warm all winter. So again, that kind of depends on where your kitty likes to live. If you have a barn cat, giving them places they can snuggle into. Biggest things for staying warm is being dry and in a insulated place. So insulated with hay, sawdust, straw, and dry is the big thing. Make sure there's not leaky things or anything like that, and that they have an ability to get to food and water without getting wet. So, winter weather in Ohio can be anything. It can be 40 degrees and rainy. It can be 10 degrees and everything, your air breath freezes in front of your face. So you got to make sure that not only are they set up in an area that can stay dry, they can set up an area that can stay warm as well, since we do have to battle both of them. And then also the ability to move around and find a comfortable spot is important because our weather changes so quickly. So yeah, that's kind of goes along with just making sure your shelter is set up. My dog gets really itchy in the winter. What can I do for that? So it depends on why your dog's itchy. Some dogs do have indoor allergens, and so those will be worse because they do spend a lot more time inside. If it's simply from dry skin, a couple little tips and tricks you can do for the wintertime for them is you can actually put a humidifier by their dog bed. That does help. It sounds simple, but it actually does make a difference. Also, feeding them oils, so flaxseed oil or fish oils. Those are really good to keep the hair coat moist, which will help keep the skin from getting so itchy. A lot of people like to use coconut oil, and I get a lot of questions about coconut oil. Coconut oil is fine. My only thing with coconut oil is not a diet food. So if you have a pet who's on a diet, I would not recommend coconut oil because it is very fattening. But really any oil that you can get into your pet's diet is going to help keep that hair coat nice and moist, and those oils are going to go out with the omega-3s and coat that hair. And when your skin isn't dry, it is a lot less itchy. So, but if those simple tricks don't really seem to help, then your pet might have some actual indoor allergens that just get worse because they see them a lot more in the winter time because they're spending more time inside. And if it gets to that point, then we might think about putting them on an allergy medication like Apoquil or doing cytopoint injections for the winter months, those types of things. So if you feel like it's a little bit more than just some dry skin, that might be a good time to make an appointment and just come in and talk about what we can do for them, keep them comfy. Is dehydration a possibility in the winter? Yes, dehydration is definitely a possibility. In fact, it's a lot more common in the wintertime than in the summertime. In the summertime, everyone is aware that it's hot and that they need to drink, that they need to have access to water all the time. We see a lot of dehydrated pets in the wintertime because the water buckets freeze, or people don't think about it because they don't feel as thirsty, those types of things. But pets, particularly if they're outside, you know, there's a lot less moisture in the air when it's cold. So when you breathe in and out, it actually takes more moisture out of your lungs when you do that. So you need to drink more than you would think in the wintertime. And then also inside the house, a lot of people around here have wood burners and things like that. And so it's really dry air. So again, that's going to pull more moisture out of your lungs each time that you breathe. So even just kind of hanging out, you need to drink more than you would think in the wintertime in order to stay hydrated. So that's actually something we do see a lot of, is dehydration even in the winter. Mostly because people don't think about it. They always think about dehydration when it's hot, but it happens a lot when it's cold too. Do you recommend any specific vitamins to give to dogs or cats in the winter? Specific vitamins? Not particularly. Unless your dog has a deficiency in some reason, we don't typically need to supplement vitamin D or anything like that. Some people have to do that when they can't go sunbathe, but it's typically not a problem with our pets. Because they have their hair coat, they're not as reliant on the sun to build up their vitamin D in their system as we are. We've kind of adapted where we need the sun to give us good amounts of vitamin D. Gotta get that nice tan, but pets won't ever get that because of the hair coat. So they're really a lot better at pulling it out of their different foods and things. So you wouldn't need necessarily different vitamins in the wintertime than they would need any other time of the year. What are the dangers of antifreeze? So antifreeze, the most recent formulas of antifreeze have actually become a lot safer for pets. They kind of got rid of the glycopyrrolate. They switched the main ingredient and they made it taste bad. So we don't really see antifreeze poisoning nearly as much in pets as we used to. However, if they do get into antifreeze or they get into an older version of the antifreeze, the big thing with that is that it causes formation of crystals in the kidneys, very distinct crystals actually, and it causes them to go into acute renal failure. So what that means is their kidneys die very quickly, and so that's a problem obviously if your kidneys don't function. What you'll notice with them is most people, the first thing they notice is that their pet can't pee. And the reason your pet can't pee is because everything's clogged up with these crystals in the kidneys themselves. If you catch them really early, there are some interventions we can do to help keep those crystals from forming. But unfortunately, once those crystals have formed and it's killed the kidney tissue, there's not a lot that we can do. And we can try putting them on IV fluids, but sometimes the damage is just too far gone at that point once the crystals have formed. So if you think your dog might have gotten into some antifreeze, bring them in. Like I said, there are some drugs we can give them to keep the crystals from forming, but once those crystals have formed and the damage has been done, unfortunately there's not a lot we can do. Can cats get fleas in the winter? Oh, absolutely. Yes, we see fleas year round. Cats, dogs, everybody gets fleas in the winter time. If you think about it, you know, if wherever your pet sleeps, okay, it's warm. We already talked about that. We want them to have a nice warm place to be. So because of that, the flea lives where your cat sleeps or where your dog sleeps, which would be in your house if they sleep in your house, which would be in the dog box if they sleep in the dog box. They can live up in the hayloft if it's a barn cat, sleeping up there. Anywhere that's warm enough for the animal to survive is warm enough for the flea to survive. And so yes, absolutely, fleas are a year-round problem, and they usually end up living in the bedding in the wintertime. And then with Ohio, being Ohio, every time it gets over 35, those fleas can move around happily. So they aren't confined to the bedding areas anymore, and so they can jump. They're out and about with everybody. And then obviously when they're actually on the animal themselves, they're plenty warm, because your normal temperature for a dog or cat is around 101 to 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So plenty warm for the fleas, so they hitch it right on that pet until the pet gets to their nice little warm bedding area, and then they hop off, and that's where they lay their eggs. And so the fleas keep breeding year round. Definitely a problem. Do pets get colds? When should I bring them into you? Pets can get colds. They can get just a little virus. Really common in cats. A lot of cats carry the herpes virus, and when they get stressed, it'll show up as a little upper respiratory thing going on. They'll get the snotty nose, they'll sneeze, maybe get a little goop in the eye. When you would need to bring them into me is when the sneezing gets excessive, the pet stops eating, or any of that discharge turns a color. Okay, if it's clear, then you're usually looking at just a virus. If it turns green or yellow or any type of color whatsoever, then you've got a secondary bacterial infection on top of that. And it's that secondary bacterial infection that we're really going to treat with our antibiotics. The underlying virus, the body should be able to clear with the supportive care, but the virus will weaken the immune system and let that bacteria come in. So if you have a cat who's what we call a chronic snotter, or a cat that always sneezes a little bit, it's probably just this virus kind of flaring up. And is it a big deal? Do we really need to rush them in and worry about it? No, as long as they're eating and drinking fine and they're only sneezing occasionally, they're probably going to be just fine. It'll kind of come up for a little bit and then it'll go back down. If they get to the point where they're sneezing a lot, their appetite's down, or that snot turns any type of color, that's when we need to see them, because then we can help them with some antibiotics. Dogs don't get as many colds, so to speak, as cats do. Typically with our dogs, they don't pass as many viruses back and forth like that like cats do. So usually if you're seeing a lot of sneezing or needle discharge or things like that from your dog, it's usually a little bit more than just a common cold, so to speak. A lot of times they are bacterially infected. Does Carrollton have an online pharmacy? Yes, we do. We do have an online pharmacy. If you go to our website, www.carrolltonanimal.com, you can just hit the pet pharmacy tab right there, and it'll take you right there. The pharmacy is for our clients, so I think anybody can browse it, but you won't be able to buy anything unless you're a client and you set up with your website, or not website, sorry, email and everything on there, and then you should be able to order anything from the website. Do pets get seasonal depression? That's something that hasn't, to my knowledge, really been researched that much in pets as far as getting seasonally depressed. I think our pets key a whole lot off of us, and so if we're not nearly as active or go get them in the winter time and we want to sit around like a couch potato a lot of times, they'll end up doing a lot of the same things. But as far as actual clinically diagnosed depression in the wintertime, like a seasonal affective disorder, to my knowledge, no one's ever really looked into that for pets. We do see a lot more pets that get stressed in the wintertime, just because a lot of times routines changed. They're spending more time inside. They might feel a little bit cramps. If we bring in other pets that are usually inside in the wintertime. So sometimes if you feel like your pet's maybe a bit stressed, we certainly could help them with we do use some antidepressants or trying diet changes, things like that. It would just depend on exactly what the pet's doing at home and all of that. So if you feel like your pet's having some trouble coping, we can definitely set up an appointment and get a good history for the individual and see if there's anything we can do to help. I have a pug who I groom often. Is it okay to bathe him during the winter? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Just make sure he has a nice warm bath, and then keep him in like a house, or use a blow dryer or something to get him completely dry before we would go outside. But yeah, like I said, bathing in the winter is fine. We just have to keep in mind, they need to dry. The biggest way that you get into trouble outside with hypothermia or frostbite or anything like that is going outside wet. When I was a kid, I never wanted to wait for my hair to dry, so I would go sled riding with wet hair and I'd get hit with icicles in my face. I could then go inside when I got cold and my hair would melt and then dry, so it wasn't a problem. But keep in mind, anything that goes outside when it's wet is going to freeze. And our pet's hair is no different than my hair. They're going to get icicles and it's going to get really cold. So just want to make sure they're totally dry. How often should I clean my dog's ears in the winter? Should my routine change for the cold months? So as far as how often should you clean your dog's ears, it kind of depends on the type of dog you have. If they have floppy ears, if they have hair that grows in their ears, things like that. As far as do you need to do it more often or less often in the winter, again, that's going to kind of depend. We had an earlier question about a dog getting itchier in the winter time. A lot of times they'll build up things in their ear based off of something that can upset their skin, like a mild allergy or something like that. So if your pet has some indoor allergens, you might want to clean them more often. If your pet really only has outdoor seasonal allergies, you probably need to clean them less often in the winter time. But as a basic rule of thumb, if you just want to routinely clean your dog's ears once a week or once every other week is good, just to kind of keep them clean. Use a gentle ear cleaner specifically designed for dogs. Be sure to fill up the whole ear canal with it. You see the liquid at the top. Let it swish it around, let them shake their head, and then just take out whatever they bring up with a cotton ball on the end of your finger there. You don't have to go digging for gold. The cleaner is going to work all that stuff up and out of there. I also recommend doing that after bathing. A lot of times water can get down the ear, and if water is sitting there in their horizontal canal, that can make them more prone to ear infections and things like that. So if you're bathing, we already talked about bathing a lot in the winter. If you bathe them, try to flush their ears out. If your pet seems to have a harder time in the winter with skin issues, then maybe clean them a little bit more often in the winter. But a lot of pets with historical skin issues actually do better in the winter time because there's less pollen and everything in the air. So a lot of times you can get away with cleaning the ears a little less often. If you have a pet with a lot of hair in their ears, you can try cleaning it more often, but if you're still having trouble with that, a lot of groomers I know will actually pluck the hair out of the ears, and that'll help with airflow and keep that wax and everything able to move up and out. A lot of times it gets caught in the hair. Dogs with upright ears often need their ears done a lot less often than dogs with floppy ears. Alright, so we got one last question. If my puppy has dry paws, should I be concerned if he walks on snow? So his paws will get wet. Okay, it's just a matter if you don't want him out there for a very long time hanging out in the snow, because that snow is going to get on his paws and melt, and then he's going to have wet paws. If he's out running around being a happy puppy, he's going to keep his toes warm by keeping the blood flow up, so you don't have to worry too much. But when he comes inside, you're definitely going to want to dry him off. And then if he starts holding his paws up like they kind of hurt a little bit, that'd be a really good time to get him back inside, because they're getting a little bit chilly. Because that snow will melt when they get on his paws. So exactly how long he can stay outside is going to depend on how much he's running around and keeping that blood flowing to those toes. So just so that everybody knows, we are going to be doing these Q&A sessions once a month. We do appreciate questions sent ahead of time, so feel free to post any on our Facebook page. And check out, I actually do have a new blog that I started. It has a lot of winter tips on it. And I really appreciate all the questions that everybody sent. And thanks for coming. It's really great. Thank you guys.